Hello, dear. It's Heather, and you're watching Save Today with Heather J. I'm somebody who has spent her entire adult life living paycheck to paycheck and being one life event away from financial crisis. Because I needed that to change, I created a budget and a budgeting channel as a way for me to stick to it and during the tough times and hopefully make a long-term change. Today's video is my week 3 flexible spending check-in for the month of October. And I have a lot to talk about today, and so I'm just going to kind of get straight into the video. For me, week 3 in my budget October is the 6th of October to the 12th of October. When I set up my budgets, because I get paid every other week and my rent is due on the 1st of the month, whichever paycheck has the 1st within it, that's when my 1st of the month starts. And so for the month of October, for me, that actually started on the 22nd of September. So my October budgeting month will be over on the 19th of October, and then I will be starting my November budgeting month. Super duper off schedule from the calendar months, but it's all about what paycheck has the 1st of the month within it. So again, for me, we're looking at my flexible spending for week 3, and flexible spending, what I'm looking at is groceries, dining out, transportation, art, and miscellaneous. Those are the categories I have the greatest control in, because I can choose where I go and when I go, and I don't owe a single thing until I'm standing in line with my purchases in front of me. It's also the areas I can get myself in the greatest trouble with. I certainly can get a little bit carried away on some of my art supplies and overspend in these areas and then not have money to pay the bills when they come due. So that's why I have to check these categories every single week if I'm kind of on a trajectory that is setting me up for failure. I can see that on a weekly basis and stop that if that happens. So let's see what kind of spending I got into this week. On the 5th, in the miscellaneous category at Walgreens, I spent $52.37. There's kind of a lot to say about this first transaction. Number one, I just said my week starts the 6th to the 12th, and this transaction is the 5th. The 5th is the Friday, and my paychecks are received actually on Fridays. And I have my paycheck split up to go into 2 separate banking accounts. And one of those banking accounts, I actually get my money sometime during Thursday instead of waiting until Friday. And that usually is there by the end of the day on Thursday. And on this particular day, I had been very, very sick. And I went after work on my way home and got a COVID test and some airborne and some Ricola, a couple of other things, chapstick, some things to kind of make me feel a little bit better. I'm not sure if I got NyQuil and Dayquil here or actually no, I did. I got it in another transaction, which we'll get to. So even though this is a day early, it was with this paycheck that was purchased with, and $52.37, by the way. In case anybody's interested, the test was negative. I was very, very sick. I still am a little bit sick. I've been sick for a very long time. I don't understand how I can be this sick for this long and have a negative test, but that is the case. So that's what that first transaction is. Then on the 6th, in the groceries category at Kroger, I spent $37.18. And I think this is when I went and got the NyQuil and Dayquil. I needed to be able to go to sleep and rest easily, and I needed to be able to be at my best, whatever that might be, during my work shifts, because taking time off from work was not going to happen. And so I needed to just kind of have a way to fight through the shifts. On the 8th, in the groceries category at Kroger's, I spent $10.33. Again, this late, I have no idea what those groceries were. I'm sure I was picking up something on my way home so that I could fix myself dinner without having to go get fast food. On the 9th, in the miscellaneous category at Walmart, I spent $77.02. And this is the shelving unit. I told you when I set up October that I have this long, narrow pantry in the kitchen, and I wanted to set up a couple of shelving units, 2 tall shelving units and then in the center I wanted to have a on wheels kind of baskets and shelves that, anyway, this $77.02 is the second of the tall shelves and one 12 or 18 pack of hangers from Walmart. As I've been unpacking all of the things I have in boxes, I have found that I'm about 6 hangers short of hanging up all of the stuff I have in there. Mostly because for years I've had in boxes clothes I wanted to harvest to use to make things. Again, I've had this conversation several times about how I wear holes in the thighs of my pants, and I have all of that perfectly good usable material that is no longer wearable because of those, and so I've saved those. And I had 3 boxes of clothes to be harvested, and I didn't have enough hangers to encompass everything that had been in boxes. So that's what that transaction is. On the 9th, in the groceries category at Walmart, so again, this was the same cartload. I just separated my miscellaneous from my groceries. This was $39.45. And this was a day I thought I was feeling better enough to go out and do my big shopping. And I got into the stores and realized there was no way I could handle this. So I just got the bare minimum and got out the door. So that's what that was. Groceries for $39.45. This had every intention of being my main grocery shopping and being kind of a one and done situation. I absolutely was not well enough for that. On the 10th, in the groceries category at Kroger's, I spent $35.89. Again, on the 10th, in the groceries category at Kroger, I spent $5.66. I have no idea what I got. Came home, started fixing something, realized I was out of whatever, and went back for that. Again, I don't keep track of what these transactions are. Like their line item details, I don't know. On the 11th, in the dining out category, you guys, I went to Starbucks and spent $6.69. And also on the 11th, in the dining out category, I got Jimmy John's for lunch for $18.16. Y'all, I did so good, and I went in 8 solid weeks without dining out. And you heard me in my last couple of videos talking about how mentally that was getting a little bit hard on me. That is not why I had these dining out situations. I had a coworker ask me if I could switch shifts with him. I normally work the closing shift. He needed the opening shift. We had a conversation about 8 days prior, talking about switching shifts on this one particular day for 3 weeks in a row. I think it was Tuesday. He needed me to work for him on Tuesday in the morning shift. And we had that conversation once. We never discussed it again, and it was a very interrupted conversation. We had to come back and forth because of interruptions dealing with guests and things that needed to be handled at the store. So I received a text on this day at 11 on the 11th. While I was asleep, I heard, didn't even beep. It was on silence. And I received a text from my boss asking if I was working today. And I said, yes, I closed. And she said, well, this other coworker's under the impression you switched shift. And as soon as she said that in text, I remembered that conversation from 8 days ago. I was now 10 minutes late for my shift. So I had to get dressed and bolt out the door. I had no time to make my coffee or to pack a lunch. I thought that I was going to be the opening manager and that I was going to have several associates and guests waiting for me to get there. So I bolted out the door and did not take any time. Once I got to work, I realized that the manager who had been texting me was already at work, and she had let the other associates and the other guests in, and it wasn't an issue. And if I had realized that, if we had been speaking on the phone and could have had that conversation, I would have taken a little bit more time at home and packed myself a lunch. I probably still would have needed to go get coffee from the gas station or something, but I was in such a mad rush to get to the store as quickly as I could because I screwed up in a huge way that there was no way I had time for coffee. And once I got Starbucks, I knew I was now spending in the dining out category and breaking that 8-week streak. And if I was going to have to break that streak and start all over again, I decided to go to Jimmy John's for lunch instead of going to Aldi's the way I have been for the last couple of weeks. And when I ordered from Jimmy John's, I went all out. I thought, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it big. And so I got a sandwich and chips and a drink and a brownie, and I spent $18.16. So that's the long story of why I did that. I obviously would not have done that if I had remembered. I would have gotten up early and I would have prepared ahead, and that wouldn't have happened. But it was 8 weeks in a row, almost, into my 9th week. I'm fine with that, and we'll just start all over again. It was one day. I wasn't going to screw up that one day for the single for $6.69. So I went out. And then on the 11th, in the groceries category at Aldi's, I spent $10.21. And on the 12th, in the miscellaneous category, Walmart online for $53.16. This is that cart with shelves and baskets on wheels that I wanted to stick in the pantry between those two tall shelves. When I initially did my pricing, all of these shelves were at my local Walmart. And the last 3 times I have gone in, the one on wheels is no longer available at my store. And when I was looking online, it was not available at any of the local stores, even stores they would have to be driving 45 minutes to an hour each direction to get to. It's just not there in the stores right now. And so I got some sort of communication from Walmart. Hey, we see you're looking at this. Here, it's in stock. Order it and have it shipped. And I ignored it, and then I went back to order it, and then it was going to come on a day I was at work, so I ignored it so that I could order it. I was like, oh, this is 2 days before I get, Anyway, tried to wait until I could time the shipping to be on my day off. Then it wasn't there. It was no longer available online. So when it came up again, I just jumped on it and I ordered it. It's coming on a day I'm going to be at work. That's annoying. But that's what this is. This 5316 is that last shelving unit option for that pantry, so I can get finally all of my kitchen boxes actually unpacked. And that is all of my flexible spending in this 1 week. And what I find really interesting is that it is exactly the same number of transactions from week 1. Does that mean in week 4 I will only have 3 transactions just like week 2? Honestly, I doubt it. I have a feeling this will be a little bit longer than just those 3 transactions. But that is where my flexible spending was. Let's see what that did for my category totals. When I come over onto this side, I have given myself X amount of dollars per week, and I break that up over my 2-week time frames, or my 2 paychecks in the month. So for my groceries, I've given myself $110 a week. Dining out, I didn't give myself anything. Transportation, I gave myself $50 per pay period. Nothing in art. And then in miscellaneous, I only really had the funds in this week, but for all of those shelving units. So in my groceries category, I did spend $138.72 in this category. I had $228.47 left from last week. So that leaves me with $89.75 in this category to get me through that final week. In the dining out, unfortunately, I did spend $24.85 in that one day, which does have me over budget by $24.85. I honestly battled briefly with myself. I could have gone to Wendy's and got their $5 burger bag for $5.35 after tax. And I was like, well, I could just go get the cheapest thing possible and not spend the $18. And then I decided, no, if it's my first transaction in 8 weeks, I'm going to not get the cheapest thing I can because I know I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy the meal I've got for myself. That could have been less by about $12. Transportation, I have not filled my gas tank up this week. I still have $49.05 left in that category for this pay period. Art, I still have not spent anything. I should go back and see how many weeks I've managed to go without spending anything in that category. Miscellaneous, I did spend $182.55. This is $51.32 over budget, more than what I had estimated. And that is all the that Walgreens trip when I was sick and needed to go get that COVID test and all of that medicine. Otherwise, all of the shelving and the one pair of pants I have purchased so far this month are exactly within the estimated budget I gave myself. So I'm okay with that. That means for my totals, I spent $346.12 in this flexible spending category. And I do have $62.63 left in my estimations to get me through that last week of the month. So I will expect that to be significantly smaller transaction size when we get to week 4. And that is where I'm at with the budget for this week. For those of you who are new here, after I bring my art into my channel, and so we're going to go over the project I'm working on now. As you can see, this is project number 2 for this month for me, and I've come a long way, but I've got a lot of things to talk about in this. First of all, I'm really thrilled with where it sits right now, and this, once I got these beads and baubles on there, I really began to like it a lot more. But prior to that, let's talk about some of the challenges I had with the construction on this. This project is a project a friend gifted to me. She took a class to learn a new technique and did not like the way it came out. And so she gifted the project to me, and I just got the project and the pattern in its current form. I did not get any of her extra scraps or fabric pieces or anything else with it. So I did not have anything to bind this with or to back this with that was originally with this project. Binding is what goes on the edge here to hold your edges together so that they don't fray and you don't have fiber fluff pulling out. I had begun to sew this together the way I do any other quilt and realized that wasn't going to work because I lacked the binding. So I pulled out all of the stitches I had already put in there and took the backing off, lined it with the muslin, and then put new stitches in. And I have quilted this thing to death with all of these wavy lines. This is meant to mimic the snow, the wind blowing the snow around. And I have over quilted this beyond over quilted this. And I was kind of annoyed with how tightly and densely I had stitched that. But of course at this point it was done and I wasn't going to undo it. These stitches would have shown, they wouldn't have sealed up. So I just left it as it was. Then I laid the back over the top of the front and sewed around the edges here so that I could face it. And I left a little bit of opening here on this side so I can pull things out. And then I trimmed off the extra backing and batting all the way up to this edge so that it wouldn't be pushing that out. And when I did that, along some of these edges, I cut it too short so it was no longer tucked under the stitches I had put in under there. So that was frustrating. So I just sewed and stitched along the edge. And it still wasn't holding it together enough. And then I thought, well, I'll try and tuck these under and hand stitch it, and that wasn't working. So then I decided to satin stitch the edges. The satin stitch is a zigzag stitch that's very, very close together. A lot of your embroidered shirts where it has your name stitched onto the fabric of your shirt, that is often satin stitch. And then I didn't like the way that looked. It flattened the edge. It looked really sloppy. It makes it look incomplete. I have considered going to get what's called grosgrain ribbon and stitch that down around the edge. I will eventually go look and see if I can find some that I like the look of this. But at that point, I considered this done. And then I remembered, as I've been unpacking, I came across some of my beads and baubles, and I remember having some sequins that were stars and snowflakes, and I had some things because I do a lot of these Christmas things. You saw the stocking from a few months ago. So I went and tracked those down, and I got all of these snowflake sequins, and some of these were snowflake buttons without backs. And so I just kind of laid those out on there, and all of a sudden I began to like this again a lot. And I laid everything out the way I wanted it. And then I know the second I start stitching, things are going to fall off. So then I put pins in all of the spots where I had the stars, and I took a picture of what color of each thing was where, so that I took a big picture and then I took a smaller one that was half and half, so that I could get these laid back out in the way that I had finally decided I liked them. So that is where we're at right now. I've got this bottom half is stitched together, and then this portion here is stitched all of these on. I did have to get some small beads out to put those through the center to hold these snowflakes on. And so I had to use a beading needle, and I don't know if you can see these in here, how small these beads are. There's no way I was going to get a traditional stitching needle through that. I had to get the beading needle. And if you can see this beading needle, number one, it's super duper thin, and it clearly bends really easily, and the eye of the needle is very, very thin, but that's what I'm working with. So I have done 2 separate after work sewing trips to get it to this point, and probably another 2 more to get the rest of that sewn on before I consider this done. And once those are stitched on, I do consider this done. If I never ever get any grosgrain ribbon on the edges, I'm fine. Having this sparkly baubles definitely draws your eye into the center and takes it away from the edge. And so if this edge always stays this kind of rough looking, I'm now okay with that. Where for a while, for probably about 6 days, it was really beginning to be discouraged about where I was at and what was the point of putting all this work in there. So that is where this project sits right now. I may or may not get my 3rd project done this month, and I knew when I picked 3 for this month that that 3rd project was a stretch goal, but now we're down to the very last week, and I don't know how much we're going to get done, on how long this is going to take me and how much time it's going to take me to work on that last thing. But that is where my project is, that is where my budget is, and that is all I have for you guys today. And again, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, please have some fun. Bye-bye now.